Welcome back, my fellow detective, to the spine-chilling role of the killers among us. Today, I bring you an infamous true crime case that shook the world to its core, leaving an indelible mark in India. It's been over a decade since the incident happened, yet the case still haunts us with its heinousness. And if you're a true crime fan but aren't familiar with Asian cases, make sure you subscribe to my channel. Our journey takes us to New Delhi, India, where the streets were once stained with the blood of a fearless victim. This case is widely regarded as one of the most atrocious sex crime cases in history, sparkling global protests and women's rights movement calling for radical reforms to curb gender-based violence. It's a sad reality that rape is the most common crime against women in India, with one rape reported every 16 minutes in 2019 and over 31,000 cases reported in 2021. This case is the inspiration behind the 2019 Netflix original series Delhi Crime. It is also known as the Nirbhaya case, named after the victim's pseudonym used by the media. Nirbhaya means fearless, and it was a fitting name for this brave soul who fought until her last breath. In accordance with India law, the victim's real name was initially not released to the media, resulting in the use of pseudonyms, including Nirbhaya. However, her identity was later revealed after her parents allowed the media to disclose it. The Nirbhaya case remains of great significance to India and leading to positive changes, including a revision of Indian law and legal system. Now, let's look at the case we have today, the case of Nirbhaya. On December 16, 2012, in Miraka, a neighborhood in South Delhi, it was supposed to be a fun night out for 22-year-old physiotherapy intern Jyoti Singh and her friend Arindra Patapandi, who had just watched the movie A Life of Pi. But little do they know, they were about to experience a nightmare that would haunt them forever. As they boarded a bus around 9:30 p.m. to head home, they had no idea that their lives were in grave danger. The bus was already occupied by 6 men, including the driver, and Arindra had a gut feeling that something was off. Suddenly, the bus took a different route, and when he asked the driver where they were going, the 6 men started to threaten them, questioning why they were out so late. The situation quickly escalated into a violent scuffle between Arindra and 6 men. They beat him mercilessly with an iron rod until he was unconscious. But the horror didn't end there. The attacker then turned their attention to Jyoti and dragged her to the back of the bus. They too brutally assaulted her with an iron rod and took turns raping her for an hour. One of the juvenile attackers inserted an iron rod into her private parts, pulling and ripping her intestine apart. Medical reports later revealed the gruesome extent of Jyoti's injuries. The attackers abused her with an iron rod, causing serious damage to her abdomen, intestine, and genitals. Despite her violent efforts to fight back, the attackers were too strong, leaving bite marks on 3 of them. This only angered the men more, and they viciously attacked her for her bravery. After the attackers were done, they carelessly threw unconscious victims out of the moving bus like garbage. It's hard to imagine the pain and suffering that Jyoti and Arindra must have gone through. But luckily, a passerby found them around 11 p.m. and called the Delhi police, who immediately rushed them to the Sadajan hospital. Jyoti received emergency care and was placed on life support, while Arindra suffered broken limbs from the attack but managed to survive. When the media revealed the attack, it was a boom and gone off. Jyoti underwent multiple surgeries, but she was in critical condition. The India government appointed a committee of doctors to make sure she received the best medical care. They made the decision on December 26 to transfer her to a hospital in Singapore to receive an organ transplant. Some doctors were against the idea as she was not in the right condition to be transferred. However, the decision was made, and during the 6-hour flights to Singapore on December 27, Jayoti suffered a cardiac arrest and never regained consciousness. On December 29, at around 5 in the morning, she was pronounced dead.
कि जब घटना हुई थी तब थी वो, कितने समय खुशियों का आया होगा, लेकिन हमें उनकी खुशियाँ बहुत कम याद आती है। हमें हमेशा दिमाग में जो उनको तकलीफ मिली वो याद रहता है। वो दिन कभी नहीं भूलता है। खासकर इन दिनों में वो 10 दिन जिंदा तो रही, लेकिन बची एक बूंद पानी के लिए तरस गई। तो ये मुझे कभी नहीं भूलता है। आज भी मुझे वो दिन याद आता है, वो रात याद आते हैं।
One of the police investigators disclosed that when she interviewed Jayoti in hospital, Jayoti was aware that she had sustained injuries and had limited time to live. She instructed the police not to spare her attackers. Despite the pain and trauma she was experiencing, she was very determined about the fact that she wanted this person caught. Within hours of the heinous incident, Delhi police sprang into action and apprehended the perpetrators. By using CCTV, they were able to identify the charter bus and its driver, a 30-year-old man named Ram Singh. With the help of the male victim, the police were able to create sketches of the attackers and track down the stolen mobile phone of the victims. The relentless efforts of the law enforcement officials paid off as they managed to apprehend all 6 suspects, including Ram Singh, his 26-year-old brother Mukesh Singh, 20-year-old assistant gym instructor Vinay Sharma, 90-year-old reseller Pravant Gupta, 70-year-old juvenile Muhammad Afroz, and 28-year-old job seeker Asher Thakur. As the facts emerged, it was revealed that the group of men had been partying together earlier that day and were heavily under the influence of alcohol. Despite knowing that the tinted windows of the charter bus make it illegal to pick up public passengers, Ram Singh decided to take his friends out for a joyride. Their first victim was a 35-year-old carpenter whom they robbed and brutally beat before dumping him off the bus. Although the carpenters managed to report the incident to the police, they failed to make any action, allowing the attackers to continue their rampage. Their next target was the young couple who fell victim to their depraved acts. 5 long and agonizing days after the brutal and senseless death of Jayoti, the Delhi police finally filed charges against the 5 adult men responsible for the crime. The only juvenile among them, Muhammad Afroz, was deemed to be 17.5 years old on the day of the attack and was accordingly tried separately in juvenile courts. Despite the gravity of their crimes, the Juvenile Justice Board decided that Afroz would not be tried as an adult. The callous and insensitive attitude of one of the suspect's lawyers were revealed on January 10th when he told the media that the victims were to blame for the attack. He claimed that they should have known better than to use public transport and that they had no business roaming the streets late at night. To add insult to injury, he even went so far as to suggest that he had never seen any instance of sexual assault against a respected lady. Such an attitude speaks volumes about the deeply entrenched misogynistic belief that still plagued Indian society. As the public outrage mounted and demands for a speedy trial grew louder, the authorities were under immense pressure to deliver justice quickly. However, the case took a shocking turn on March 11, 2013, when Ram Singh, the bus driver, was found hanging in his cell along with 3 other inmates. The authorities were unable to determine whether it was a suicide or a case of foul play. Finally, after months of rigorous investigation and legal proceedings, the 4 adult men were found guilty of their crimes on September 10, 2013 by the Fast-Track Court of Delhi. The presiding judge, Yogesh Khanna, in his verdict, declared that their crimes had shocked the collective conscience of India, and they deserved nothing less than death penalty. Despite their pleas for mercy, Judge Khanna held that they could not be allowed to escape the consequence of their actions. The juvenile too was found guilty of murder and assault on August 31, 2013, and was sentenced to the maximum punishment of 3 years in prison. He was eventually released on December 20, 2015, sparkling a new wave of public debate on the need for a stricter law to deal with juvenile offenders. The heartless attitude of Mekaz Singh, one of the 4 assailants responsible for the brutal rape and murder of Jayoti, was on full display even while he was on death row. He showed no remorse for his actions and instead, shockingly, blamed the victims for resisting their assault. According to him, if Jayoti had not fought back, she might have been alive today.
ताली कभी एक हाथ से नहीं बजती, दोनों हाथों से बजती है। ये चीज़ देखी जाए। अगर कोई शरीफ लड़की होती है रात को 9 बजे मतलब नहीं घूमती है, लड़के भी उतना उससे ज़्यादा जिम्मेदार है रेप के लिए।
On March 13, 2014, the Delhi High Court confirmed the death sentence of all 4 men. However, they appealed their sentence, and the case went all the way to the Supreme Court. But on May 5, 2017, the highest court in the land upheld their death sentence, putting an end to any hopes of reprieve. Even the lawyers' attempt to secure mercy from the president proved futile, and the 4 convicts were eventually executed in Tihar jail, the biggest one in India, on March 20, 2020. Their lifeless bodies were left hanging for 30 long minutes before being declared dead. The horrific nature of the crime and the gruesome details of Jayoti's injuries sent shockwaves across the globe. But nowhere was the impact more profound than India. The incident sparked widespread outrages and people took to the streets in protest. The India Gate and Rasina Hill in New Delhi became the epicenter of demonstrations. But similar protests erupted throughout the country. The anger and frustration of the people were palpable as they demanded swift justice and an end to the source of sexual violence against women. The protests in India soon spread to other parts of South Asia, with marches and rallies being held in Nepal, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. It given fresh impetus to protest against sexual violence, and while rallies on similar issues were largely dominated by women before this time, men were also actively taking part in the protests. They demanded harsher punishment for crimes against women, along with accountability from the state. The fact that a minor was among the attackers caused outrage over the fact that he could not be sentenced as an adult. In the wake of a heart-wrenching incident, India's legal system underwent a transformation. The country's lawmakers took swift action to strengthen punishments for crime against women. The India Penal Code was revised to increase the punishment for rape, with a minimum sentence of 7 years, later increased to 10 years. Rape causing death or a vegetative state now carries a minimum sentence of 20 years. Now, an amendment of the Juvenile Justice Act, minors aged 16 to 18 can be tried as adults if accused of heinous crimes. Despite these legal changes, crime against women in India remain widespread, even though 7 years passing since Nirbhaya's horrific gang rape, which sent shockwaves across the country. The state bus stand in South Delhi remains a troubling location where women continue to face unwelcome remarks and stares. Experts say the law and society must evolve together. Improper enforcement of laws must be addressed, and society must engage in meaningful dialogue to confront its deeply rooted patriarchal values. That's all for today. Thank you for watching my videos. Stay safe until we see you next time, because killers is among us.